Jasmine.
Hey, how are you, Jennifer?
Good. We'll start off with like a pulse check because it's been a crazy week on this end. I don't know about yours, but it's always a bit of a roller coaster, I think, week to week. But how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm curious. I want to hear from you first, actually. Tell me what's going on.
News is we kicked off fundraising, which is wild within the last like week and a half, 2 weeks. And it's just been a really busy time finding a balance between some of the partnerships that we're going to be launching and, you know, life stuff. So it's been a journey and a half. It feels like there's so much that has happened packed into a week and a half, 2 weeks time period. So a little spinny. But what about yourself?
Yeah, I know it's funny. I was just thinking, like, on my way to the office today, like, it's Sunday, right? But like, I don't, I don't even know because I work every day of the week, right? So like so much happens every single day, and there's so much always happening that it's funny
Mm-hmm.
how the days like really run together so quickly, and it's like, okay, what happened a week ago? But I don't know, but I can tell you what I just came from though. So one
Yeah.
of my friends who's here in the Phoenix startup community, she is building a HIPAA compliant chatbot. It's called botco.ai, and she's
Cool.
in the Google Accelerator right now for startups,
Yeah.
and they were out here filming. And so she was like, I need people to help be part of this photo shoot for Google. So it was so much fun, but actually, like, there were a handful of us in the room talking about like different accelerators we've been part of, or like there was another girl who went through Techstars. And I just thought it would be really interesting to kind of open with like your experience because you went through Y
Mhm.
Combinator.
Yeah. Yeah. We did the summer 21 batch, and it was one of those things that we didn't really know any nurses that at the time, or these nurse founded companies that had gone through it to start, and then we got connected with one, but we were the first fully nurse led company to be backed by Y Combinator, which is wild. And funny enough,
Yay! It's
when
amazing.
we it was incredible. We applied and we had a lot of traction with our flagship product and an idea for where we wanted to grow things, but we were just like really hopeful and idealistic about how this was going to work for us. But the cool thing was, and I think it was really serendipitous, is that we had our interview for Y Combinator on International Day of Nurses. Like it just happened to be
Oh,
Florence Nightingale's birthday when we had our interview, which was so wild. And then yeah, we got the call
it's a
shortly
sign.
afterwards that we were accepted into Y Combinator's Summer 21 batch. And then it was kind of the craziest, most intense experience that I've ever been a part of, but so grateful. But yeah, it was there was a couple nurses that had gone through Y Combinator before us and
Mhm.
maybe even after us. But their companies weren't fully nurse led. They had other team members on the company as founders starting out the gate. And so ours was just a little bit different. And then we started out. But yeah, and it's so nice to kind of see more nurses like looking for these accelerator opportunities and ways to get plugged in, and the resources and support that are available to you from them, because the community that you kind of come into contact with. I think that's the biggest thing that you walk away with, is this network of
Yeah,
people also
I'm sure
working
that's the
really hard
case.
to create something really cool that's going to be like helpful and impactful. And it's just really nice to see more nurses kind of finding those resources out there.
Right. And so, like, just thinking about nurses right now, like, I think about in my state, for example, like, we've got a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, I feel like, networking infrastructure built in within our own startup community that
Yeah.
can kind of help foster. So, if you have an idea, you can kind of like incubate a little bit in your own like space, and then you can take it to like something bigger, like Techstars or Y Combinator, or like these really big, well known accelerators. But what would you say for someone like just starting out too, like based on your experience, like how would you kind of get to where you got going through Y Combinator?
I think my advice for people, I'm curious to hear yours. I think that it's fabulous that Phoenix actually has a pretty good, like a pretty robust and up and coming community of innovation and founders and entrepreneurs, and I think that's amazing. And for those though that might live in more desert areas or there's not a big as community for innovation, but if there is a university that's close by, I would say really look into the universities that you're nearby and see what they have to offer, because oftentimes they have some sort of innovation arm for the students that are there, or being able to plug into some of the resources that they have available. And there are smaller accelerators, like you don't have to go from like nothing to something of like Techstars and Y Combinator magnitude, but we did some smaller accelerators like first starting out of the gate. And a lot of them, because of this virtual land we live in, a lot of them are accessible and remote and available to people who may not have to be like boots on the ground and be present, like have one in your location. So definitely, I would say check out the smaller accelerators out of the outside of where you are, if you can't find anything super local that make fit what you're building and what support you need. And some will give you money, and some cost money to be a part of, and some will take a portion of your business, and some don't. I think it just all depends on what kind of support you're needing and what's available for you out there. But I would say utilize your local resources like universities, and then find opportunities that are outside but still accessible for you for different accelerators. And then apply to Y Combinator if you feel like look through things, and if you feel that you're ready, go for it and give me a call. I'll help you through that application. But yeah, that's been my experience. But how about Navi? Have you guys thought about going through any of those accelerators, and talk about any of your experience, either weighing things and participating in things, all of that stuff?
Yeah, so you brought up a really good point about starting with universities, and that's what I originally did. So I
Mm-hmm.
took the idea. I went to Arizona State University, where I'm studying right now for my PhD, and I entered into what they call their venture doubles. And
Yeah.
through that process, it was kind of like a mini boot camp of like, how do you even build a business? And at the end, they award prize money to like a handful of the students. So that was the first big like jump that I had taken, and we walked out winning $10,000. That helped, fuel contracts from attorneys, that sort of thing. But then what happened from there was all of these people who are mentors for venture doubles are very well connected in the startup community here in Phoenix.
Ah.
So they were like, "Oh, you need to consider this. You should think about this." And so like that's the power of networking. And once you make that little jump in somewhere, and that's why it's important to share your idea and to talk to
Mm-hmm.
people about what it is you're doing, because they can help point you in the right directions of like, oh, you'd be a great candidate for that. So after Venture Doubles, actually, I did a virtual accelerator through the Arizona Commerce Authority. And again, it was like just led by a bunch of mentors in the startup community here. And it was like, I think it was an 8 or 12 week program. But it was just super helpful to like learn with a handful of peers, and that didn't cost me anything. It's free from the state of
Mm-hmm.
Arizona, and they transitioned this 12-week program into what they call the Venture Ready program, and they take 10 startups twice a year to be part of this cohort, and they give you
Mm-hmm.
100 plus. You have a mentor for the whole year that just kind of helps guide you as you're like building and growing. So we applied the first time like directly out of the accelerator, the virtual accelerator, and we won, which was amazing because like most people never win on their first time.
That's
So we did it, which
incredible.
was really cool. Yeah, and
Very
it's funny,
validating.
it's very validating. But then it's like the
Yeah.
more you do, the more you see, the more you grow, and then the more opportunities else come to you. So like since
Yeah.
then, we actually applied for one of the tech stars with Melinda Gates. I would like,
Oh yeah.
she's amazing. It was through Pivotal Ventures, and it was one specific for like aging. But when I looked at the terms, it was like they were going to take 8%, and at that point, we had so much in revenue that it didn't make sense for me to go
Mm-hmm.
through it. Whether that's a good decision or not, I don't know. But I just kind of stepped away and focused instead of going back and learning more. I just wanted to focus on building the business. So there are certain things like this Google opportunity would be really freaking cool to take on in the future. But she said the application only comes like once a year, but they have like special ones for minorities, which is really important. So like being Hispanic, you'd be able to apply for like the Latina founders cohort of the Google startups. So, especially for people who are minorities, like there are so many opportunities to hop into the space and have mentorship from people that really want to help you and to help bring more diversity, not only into the ecosystem, but into the building of like these businesses that are transforming lives. And just like healthcare, businesses should be the same way. Like we need businesses that are run by people who match the people that
The
we're like providing the
demographics,
services
yeah.
for. Yes.
I think that's so cool. And you hit on a couple really, like, I think important things. Like, but to back up a little bit, and one thing you mentioned, outside of the importance of diversity, especially in healthcare, just as much as it is in building these businesses and pulling people on, was when you're first starting out, the hesitation. Because I've talked to many people who've had it, and we did it too in the beginning, but sharing your idea with people so they can support and help you. I think that there's such a scary thing, because there's just this idea that you're going to tell people your idea and then they're going to steal it, and then you're not going to
Yeah.
have that idea anymore. And there's this balance, right? Because I think that we felt that initially, wanting everyone to sign NDAs or being so scared to tell somebody about what you're working on. And then I've spoken to quite a few different nurses who are were wanting guidance, and they were so like fearful of trying to share their idea for the sake for that part. But do you have any advice for folks that are outside of share trying to get over that trepidation of sharing your ideas for to folks to find support?
Yeah. Well, an idea is just an idea, right? Like I'm sure there's lots of people who have the same idea that you and I are both working on, but
Exactly.
the execution of it is hard. It's not easy. And so it's important to talk about it. I think like I know I was the same way. I was like, oh my God, someone's totally gonna steal my idea. But then I was just like, you know what? People can't have the opportunity to help me if I don't tell them what it is that I'm doing, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And that competition comes, right? You have a great idea. Like there's somebody, chances are, like you said, there's somebody that's going to either currently working on it or going to come up with some sort of variation of what you're doing. But you're doing what you're doing, and it's hard. And like execution, like you said, an implementation of that idea, whether it be within a within a hospital or outside. I think being able to use your network and find people to support you and lean on in areas that you're not very strong in, is everything. But if you don't share your idea, then you can't bring along and pull people into the fold to kind of help you kind of move all of that forward. So I think that that's really great. And then of course, like we mentioned, the diversity and how important it is to be able to kind of um, celebrate these different backgrounds and experiences and pull them into businesses, and then make sure that you are hiring in that sort of way too, I think is really important.
Yeah. And I mean, just for people who aren't aware, who may be listening, like only 2 to 3% of ventures
Mm-hmm.
that go out and try to raise funds that receive funds, like that's how many women receive venture capital. Just 2 to 3% of all of the dollars that go out, and it's even
Wow.
less for minorities
Minority
too.
women,
So
yeah.
when you combine those things, when you take like women like us who are also minorities, right? Like we have this double-edged sword that we kind of have to work against. But I mean, you and I don't think we like let that bother us. Like we know that that's a number, but we don't let it stop us. Like we're just going.
Right. And I think I don't think that it's been a hindrance for us at all. And I think part of it was, maybe a small part is because we came from a profession. Yes, we're in this sort of world of foundership right now and entrepreneurship and building our business. And especially in tech, the majority of folks building their businesses and getting this venture capital are men. But um, by profession, nursing is largely female, largely like at a high percentage. And so we we came from a profession where we were the majority and we were plenty as far as who we are. And then it's been an interesting transition entering into a sector of like business and tech and finding investors and talking to people who are outside of healthcare and how drastically that's different as far as the percentages of women found in the space. And I remember going to a WeWork in San Francisco when my co-founder lived there, and we were doing a little bit of hybrid, and walking into the WeWork and having like not seeing any women at all. It's just it really makes that relevant to you when you're like experiencing it and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm like the only one here, and you're taking your space and you're making it happen. But I think putting ourselves in those positions more often is what creates change. So
It does.
excited to see
And
that happen.
it's funny. So I actually I hired an executive coach. Did I tell you?
You did. I'm so glad you did that. I thing's on my list to do for sure.
Oh, I'm so excited, but this is one of the things that we were talking about because he tends to coach more women than he does men. And he's been
Mm,
finding like all of these similarities across all the women. And one of the questions he asked me was like, how does that make you feel when you walk into a room and you're like the only woman or one of only a few? And I told him in the beginning, at first, it was like really intimidating for me. And I think
mm-hmm.
it was part of a mix of like this imposter syndrome for me walking into a room, like, who am I yet? Like, I don't think I'd had enough credibility at that point. And even now, I still kind of question myself. But, I've had to just flip my mindset, right? So instead of walking in and being like, oh my gosh, I'm one of only a handful of women in this entire room,
Mm-hmm.
like it's overwhelming or it feels uncomfortable, it's now
Mm-hmm.
just like so exciting. Like I am one of the women in the room. Like, and
Yes.
by being here, we're going to help more women become members of like this room. And the more doors we open by us being
Mm-hmm.
there, the more women can follow behind and join alongside us and like enter these rooms too. And so we're just incredibly powerful if we unite and come together and just really support one another.
Yes, I think that's super important if we can go ahead and support each other. And I think that there are accelerators. Oh my gosh, I don't know why that word was so hard to say. But there are accelerators out there who really pour into minority and women founders, and there are investors out there who have funds that are specifically dedicated to minority and women founders. And I think like being able to explore those for everybody out there listening, I think that that is a great opportunity that where we can support one another and just have that sort of like synergistic little circle where and we're growing it all the way around. And that healthcare benefits that way too, just as much as all of these businesses and startups that are coming out in the world. And it's going to be really interesting. I think that that's one thing that has happened specifically with nurses during COVID. I know so many conversations come back to COVID, but it was such like a big important chunk of healthcare that happened recently.
Mhm.
But at I think that if anything was like a silver lining for it, I think that there was so much more advocacy for our profession and for who we are and what we need. And I think that being able to take that in the sense of entrepreneurship is really cool, and being able to advocate for ourselves and our space in these places is really important, and being able to kind of own that. And I'm so glad that we've been able to see that happen more recent, like more in the recent years, and leaning into nurses being in Congress and nurses being in business and really kind of showcasing and highlighting what the profession, all the areas that this profession can touch, because I think that society hasn't really seen that too much. And the more that we can go ahead and kind of highlight all of those aspects of what nurses are and what they're capable of doing, I think that it's healthy for us as a profession, and it gives people a more clear idea of what we're capable of.
Yeah, full agreement. Like nurses belong in all places, not just the bedside. Like that's how we can help take our experiences at the bedside and help transform healthcare, whether it's in schools, in public health, in policy work, whatever. It just, I think it gives us a different lens of how we look at the world and
Mm-hmm.
just really looking at human beings. I think we take a very holistic perspective, and that's what is so important. I think that we bring to the table is that it's never about us. It's about what is good for like the community and the health of others. So I'm always really excited when I see nurses like running for office or like outside of
Yes.
traditional bedside
Yeah.
roles because they're just making such a big difference in ways that they can in a really cool way. So, oh,
Yeah.
I love that.
And it really is special. And I think being able to, when you do find yourself in these spaces and these roles that are outside of, like you said, traditional nursing roles, being able to be a support to the people like coming after you for someone for them to go to and find support in, because we talked about accelerators and how beneficial those can be for your business, but finding support people and champions and folks to ask questions to, that means just as much as an accelerator, if not more, because your accelerator will start and end, but these mentorships and these support people that you're able to network with, can be a constant kind of sounding board for you, questions to give you feedback on things that your pitch, something that you're going back and forth with. So I think building those connections, and being somebody who's open to having those conversations, because it would be so easy, right? Because you're busy, you get to this point where you're doing X, Y, and Z, right? You're running a business, so you have so many meetings and on your calendar to not be able to pour back into people. But I think that that's really important. So if somebody happens to LinkedIn message me, like, and they have a question, they're another nurse wanting to know advice on something or ask me a question, I think I will always take the opportunity to try and set some sort of like time aside for help them with that, or at least respond to them, because I think like that is how we give back too. So as much as we are looking to be in the like celebrating people in these roles, once you find yourselves in these roles, being able to be accessible for people who are coming, like I said, coming after you, I think is really important.
Yeah, and speaking of which, so it's like really cloudy and rainy out here in Phoenix today, but tonight starts the Mayo Clinic ASU MedTech Accelerator, and we were the first nurse-led company to go through it last year. And so our mutual friend
Yes,
Lindsay
it's
was
cool.
flying in tonight because I went through the accelerator and I was like, Lindsay, like I'd love for
Oh,
you to go
that's
through it
so
because it would be so
cool.
important. Yeah. So she applied and they only take 10 companies around the world every year. That's it. And so she's one of them. And I'm just so excited that, like, just by having that conversation of, like, I think that this accelerator would benefit for you. Like, let's make some introductions, let's make it happen. She's a part of it this year, and it could potentially transform everything about what she's doing. And it's so exciting. Like, being able to sit and watch other people succeed in what they're
Mm.
doing and making those connections happen for them so that they can, I like, that's probably like my favorite part about what I do now, like just how you can connect people and really allow them to take advantage of all the opportunities that they maybe didn't know were possible.
Yeah, I think that that's the more that we grow our network and the more people that we connect with, being able to kind of pull people along and, like you said, kind of plug them in wherever it makes sense. I think that that's kind of a fun little game that you get to play along the way. And it helps people kind of be in the right space and get plugged into who they need to talk to make things happen. But I'm so excited to kind of one day bring Lindsay on and do like a show and tell with everybody about
Yeah,
what an amazing human she
it
is
would
and
be
kind
great
of
to
what
hear her
she's bringing
story.
into the healthcare space and what she's created. So we will be happy to share that with you soon when she has a moment to chat with us. I know she's a busy human.
Yeah, when she has a moment to chat. So, yay! Well, if you could go back and just give someone one piece of advice about applying to like Y Combinator or anything related to like accelerators, what would you want people to know?
I would say I think the hardest part is having the confidence to do it, and like I think that there's always reasons why, because we know our businesses more intimately than anybody else. Like we know the parts that are going really well and we know the parts that aren't going really well. And it's easy for you to psych yourself out and be like, oh no, I'm not ready yet. Oh no, it's not good enough yet. Oh no, I'm still struggling in this area or this part needs to be better. And while that might be true to some degree, I think that if you stay in that mindset, you'll never hit submit. You'll never hit go because nothing is ever going to be absolutely pristine and perfect. But I think that being able to have the confidence and the trust that even if it is a no, there's potential feedback that comes with that. That is your name that comes to top of mind next time you apply. Like they already have this idea of who you are and what you've done, and if you've done all the things that you said that you were going to do in that first application, and you come back around and you did that times five, then I think that speaks volumes. So I would say don't be scared, don't be afraid to move forward and hit submit on those applications. I think there can be a lot of fear associated with not being good enough, but you are good enough. You have gotten to the point where you're considering doing an accelerator because you met milestones of your own. And I think that that's cool and amazing. And to
Yeah.
not be afraid to move forward. So that's my advice. But I'll throw that back to you. Do you have any advice on your end for people who are doing the same or considering?
Yeah, I would just like check everything that you said, number one. And then like plus one everything. And just like it's about just starting, right? Like for me, I just want to open every door that I can and then decide which way I want to go based on which doors open. And sometimes, like you said, you may not get it the first time, but it may happen down the road. And so just not giving up, right? Like you've got to
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of persistence to be able to be like, okay, it's maybe just not the right time, or maybe I need to tweak something a little bit. And so just being able to listen to what people are telling you along the way, and
Mm-hmm.
really using their words to guide any changes you make or how you shape how you talk about what you're doing, but just paying close attention to what people are telling you along the way, and taking it without any sort of feeling. Like just hear it, listen to it, and think about it. Don't turn it into something positive or negative, but just do what you need to do with the information you're given. And I think that would be really helpful for anyone because even when you get into an accelerator, you're going to have so many people telling
Mm.
you so many different things to do. And
Yes.
at the end of the day, you've got to decide what's right and what's best for you. And so, like, that's what I always say, like, as a nurse, that's my superpower is listening to my gut because, like, my gut led everything with all of the patients I cared for. And it's the same in startup world too. Like listening to my gut is what's helping me navigate which route am I going to take here or there. And I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
hope at the end of the day I'm making the right decisions. Like I don't know, but
Right.
like it's just a game, and it really is an adventure that you decide. But ultimately, like the more opportunities you can create for yourself, the more opportunities there are for you to take different paths.
I 100% agree with that. I think especially if you go into the more you network and the accelerators that you find yourself in, you're going to have a whole bunch of input, like you said, Jasmine, of people giving you advice and feedback,
Yeah.
but being able to synthesize all that feedback and everything that you're being told in a way that what is going to be the most helpful to my business and to me leading it, or like what do I need to go ahead and take and leave, because there's some advice that you will get, I guarantee you, will not be sound advice. But there's also advice that you don't want to take that you should. And I think to your point, like leaning into your gut and knowing where it's coming from a good place and when it's not. And who's telling you this advice and how much credit you should go ahead and like credence you should give to them as far as being able to apply anything. I think all of that sometimes is learned in time, sometimes is like using your gut and leaning into your other resources and your mentors and kind of being soundboards. But if you have one person telling you one thing and then 20 other people telling you something else, just try and kind of reason that out about what makes the most sense. But I 100% agree with you, and not giving up and not quitting and being persistent, because this path is full of no's and things that don't work out. And you have to really be passionate about what you're doing, because it's easy to just, oh my gosh, this is hard. The amount of times, like, I would have quit probably, 200 times if I quit whenever it got hard. Um, but I think that the persistent and committed to this big vision and this impact that you're able to create, I think is really special. So I 100% agree with your advice. And I hope that everyone can kind of get plugged into a resource, a network, a mentor, wherever you are, whether it be remote or through a university or through somebody who knows somebody else that is able to kind of steer you in the direction that you need to go. I think like that is what I hope for you this week. Homework.
Yeah, and if you have any questions about like accelerators or what they do or how they've been helpful or just any questions about them, just let us know. Like leave a comment and what it is that you'd like to hear us kind of expand on a little bit more. We're happy to detail
Mm-hmm.
because there's so much information in general, and you could have like an episode for each like aspect of like an accelerator and what they're like. So let us know what's important to you, what you want to hear, and we're happy to just share our experiences with you.
Yeah, yeah. Until next time though, we will talk to you later.
Okay, bye.